The Linux file system hierarchy is one of the most confusing topics for beginners, but also one of the easiest once you understand the logic behind it. In this video, I will explain everything you need to know about the Linux file system hierarchy. By the end of this video, I promise you won't be confused anymore. Before we dive into specific directories, let's understand what FHS actually means. FHS stands for File System Hierarchy Standard. Linux is a Unix-like operating system and it follows the design principles of Unix, which dates back to the 1970s and 80s. When Linux was created, it followed the same logical structure used by Unix systems. That structure defines where files should live and why they live there. That's exactly what FHS gives us, a standard way to organize data on Linux. If you're interested in the history of Linux, I have already made a separate video. The link is in the description. You could just go ahead and check that. To better understand the topic, let's compare Linux and Windows. Linux, just like Windows or Mac operating system, is an operating system. The goal is the same: manage hardware, run applications, and stores data. But Linux does some of its things a little differently. One major difference is that Linux relies much more on the terminal, where in Windows and Mac OS, we are mostly dealing with graphical user interface. Because of that, the terminology are also slightly different. For example, in Windows, we have something called folder, which stores the data, but in Linux, we call it a directory, which both of them does the same work, but they are named differently. However, there are some technical differences behind the scenes, but you don't need to worry about that right now. Understanding the terminology will help you focus on understanding Linux instead of getting stuck on new words. And also, there are some other terminologies which are different in Windows and Linux, which I will make a separate video for that because this video might get too long if I add all those terminologies as well. Now, there's a core concept that everything is treated as files in Linux. And by file, I don't just mean documents like the TXT extension or PDF extension. A file is anything that can be read from or written to using a file path. That includes configuration files, system settings, running processes, and even hardware devices. Because of this design, Linux organizes everything into specific directories. Welcome to the start of a very special series. If you have ever looked at the Linux file system and felt lost, you're not alone. Over the next few days, I'm going to break down the entire Linux hierarchy by treating it like a big family tree. This is the first video in the series. Today I'm going to explain the two most important and frequently used directories, the root and the home directory. Because the file system is so deep, I am breaking this into a 5-part series so we can really dive into the details without making the video too long. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the grandmother, the toolbox, or the rest of the family in the upcoming lessons. Let's start with the most important directory in Linux, the root directory. To understand the root directory, you don't have to overthink. Just as its name says, it is the root. By default, the root is something that everything else comes from. It is the most important and powerful part of a tree. In the same way, every other directory in Linux starts from the root. To compare it with Windows, Linux does not have multiple drive letters like C or D. There is only one starting point, and that is the / or root. Now forget everything else you have heard about the root directory because it will make you more confused. Just think of it like the grandfather of the Linux. All the other directories, files, and even hardware devices like your CPU and disks or its children and grandchildren. It is literally like the grandfather. And just like grandfather often guides the family, the root also tells the system what to do. It holds the permission and ownership of everything. As you could see on the screen, all the other directories are coming under the root, which we will go one by one and explain all of them. Moving from the root directory, the next directory I want to explain is the home directory, which lives under the root directory. Let's just go ahead and list the root directory. As you could see here, we have the home directory, and if we just go ahead and listed, we could see the name of all the users, and you don't have to overthink the home directory. As the name suggests, it is the home where all the user accounts live. Think of it like a house where a family lives, but everyone has their own separate room. The combination of all these individual rooms is what makes the house a home. Now in Linux, all the users on the system have their own room and home. As you could see, I have three users, Mansoor, Mansoor123, and Test. Even though each user has their own separate space, all of them are registered together in the home directory under the root. Now there is a common point of confusion among the beginners who are just learning Linux, and they're always confused that why the information or the files that we see under the home, which is under the root directory, is not matching with the home that we have under the file. So as you could see here, we have downloads, documents, and everything, and the home that you could see under the roots directory, it has some other information. Let's just go ahead and list the home that we have inside our files. As you could see, we have this information, documents, downloads, and everything, but it's completely different than what do we have in home, which is under the root directory. The reason is that this information which is coming under the tilde or files home, this is users specific, where all the information that a user has is listed here. But this home under the root directory is just the name of all the users that we have on the system. So in my system, I have three users as Mansoor, Mansoor123, and Test. And this home directory under the root is just listing that. It doesn't care about my personal files and personal information. If you have to access that, you have to just list the tilde or the home that is under the files. So these are completely two different things. Now to compare the Linux and Windows, the equivalent of the home directory in Linux is something called the user folder in Windows, where both of them are showing the user's name. So in Linux, under the home directory in root, we could see the name of the users. The same way in Windows, under the users folder, we could see the name of the users which are using the system.